did a bit of an introduction to the sacraments. We talked about kind of the history of baptism and communion, where they come from, some of the scriptural bases, as well as the, specifically with baptism, we talked about the Jewish ritual, the ritual that of purification and cleansing that informs or evolves into baptism in the first century amongst the Christian community. And if you have any questions about that, because you weren't here last week, or don't hesitate to bring that stuff up. We also talked about the concept of communion and how in the early church, communion and baptism were linked insofar as that in order to participate in the Eucharist, in the meal, you had to have undergone the ritual of baptism, which was done once a year on Easter Vigil. So you would spend a year in preparation before you were baptized in the dark on Easter Vigil, naked. Naked is the day you were born. The women and men got baptized separately. So don't worry. And then after that, you were invited to participate in the ritual of the meal. And of course, one of the communion in a couple of weeks, the key things there is that meal was always carried with it not just the idea of forgiveness, but also after that meal was done, there was the gathering, the ingathering, in which they would collect food and money to bring to the widow, the orphan, the poor. That was always part of that concept, which I think is kind of a really beautiful way of thinking about what sacrament, the holy things, meant in that context, and hopefully we carry forward today. 2 words that I want you to remember is, we're talking about sacrament, which is a Latin translation of a Greek word, which is mysterium. So one of the core competencies here in understanding the sacraments is realizing that in the earliest understanding of sacrament, it was a mystery, right? In other words, it was something that we can articulate what's going on, we can articulate the meaning for us, but the mechanics of it, and not just the mechanics, but the scope of it, we don't understand everything, and that's the point, because again, it's what, to pull back Paul's image, it's what God does, it's this down arrow of grace. And if you remember Augustine of Hippo kind of introduces the concept of sacrament when he talks about sacrament as being an outward expression of an inward grace. Outward expression of an inward grace. The other thing that I think we can talk about, as I forgot, is don't sleep on the carryover Jewish ritual practice to what become our sacraments as well. Kurt brought up, the heavy through lines of the Passover meal and its influence on communion. Here's another one that's really important. So, what do you call the bread? The host. Okay, it's a false friend. It's a faux ami. Because when you think of host, what do you think of? It's not wrong, but what do you? Go ahead. Hospitality, welcoming. You think of the person that's inviting you to their table. Except host comes from the Latin hostia, which means sacrifice. We are, as the Levites did back in the old days, we are eating of the sacrifice at the table on Sunday morning. We'll talk about that more in 2 weeks. Okay, let's talk about baptism. Go, Paul.
That needs to be intimately joined with the concept of the eating of the sacrificial animals.
Yep.
And we so distance ourselves from sacrifice in America. And as always, we in America, you can have what you want without sacrifice.
Yeah.
I think we've made a religion out of that, and we don't even know we've done it.
Or somebody else's sacrifice.
Right. And so we do, I think in our civil religion, we pretty much deify the idea of the sacrifice of those who have been killed in combat in the military. Because it's the most concrete thing, I think, in our experience, but it's so distant from us that we keep saying, oh, these are wonderful heroes. These people are wonderful heroes. But in our lives, there's no heroism or whatever you want to call it. There's no real sacrifice. And I think it's key because then what we do is we conflate sacrifice with our efforts. In our own sort of ideas of martyrdom, of I'm doing this for my kids or something like that. And we keep, I think, missing the phrase that all Christians can do is make a sacrifice of thanksgiving for a sacrifice that has been made for us, that is completely justifying us. And that sacrifice is not salvific. And I think that's the confusion that I keep coming back to over and over when we think of believer baptism. It's I'm making a choice. I am making a sacrifice in making this choice. I'm giving up all these other things. I'm going to actually be faithful to one woman, kind of thing, and that's a terrible sacrifice for me.
One woman for the rest of your life.
And it's such a, but it's put in our modern context. It's like, oh, I don't know how anybody can do that. Like that's a great sacrifice. And I'm thinking, our perspective on sacrifice is so muted. And so religion becomes such a colorless, lacking in vitality kind of thing. Okay, so I'm for us getting back to the bloodiness of the sacrifice, and our own. I mean, for instance, when I think of the blood and how we want to kind of distance ourselves from, oh well, a man shouldn't be in the presence of that because he might faint. And I'm going, there again, we keep separating it and making our faith antiseptic and I guess I want to keep saying body, not embodied.
The sacred part of sacramental.
Right, and so the great mystery of Christianity is the incarnation of God into humanity, right? And then we do everything we can to separate body from soul.
Yeah.
And in my life, I've been so grateful that I belong to a sacramental faith because I cannot separate out God from food, God from my body, God from my neighbor, God from sex, God from marriage, God from God. I can't. But we do all that segmenting in our brains nowadays very conveniently. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to throw this in here because. But one example for me is I've just been very conscious of. I was born in 1954, and the pill came out in 62 or so, and then about 30 years later, it kind of caught up with us in terms of what it's doing for our population.
Yeah.
Decline, right? As an example. But in my mind, there's been this very easy thing of you desacralize marriage with a chemical pill. Why? Well, because you're taking away a union of sex with procreation in many, many ways. Okay? And that's a bodily thing. Okay? But we don't want to think about that in the church because the church thinks about things of the spirit, but not of the body. so much. So I mean, what I keep saying is that sacramentality for me is about body, spirit connection and inability to disconnect it. And I see that as very, very Jewish. They don't have that duality, right? And so what we keep getting is people thinking, oh, yeah, you have a little bit of bread and a little bit of wine, and that's symbolic, so that you remember something that happened 2,000 years ago or something like that. Instead of going, oh my gosh. For Augustine, it was like, here is look at all these things with integrity, bringing them all together. So that I'm very, very concerned with this lack of connectivity between the way that God has created us and is creating us and is redeeming us in the present and redeems us into a future beyond death. I'm very concerned with the lack of the integrity of that and the fact that our sacraments aren't speaking to people today. And I think a very healthy way. In other words, I think we're missing out on the depth of the health that's being, I'm going to say, communicated to us. Mm-hmm. Okay? And I know I said a mouthful, but it's just so sad for me to celebrate these sacraments and then for them to be so misunderstood by us, not just by the culture around us, because we've been so infected with the cultural ideas of body-spirit dualism. Is that?
Yeah. Well, no. I don't mean to make light of it. There's several ideas there.
Yeah, there's a lot of ideas there, but,
yeah.
but I just see it as central to my identity, and I feel like, why doesn't anybody get what's going on here?
Yeah.
How unbelievably mysterious and weird this is.
Yeah.
Weirdly cool.
Yeah.
Just unbelievably cool. But by unbelievable, I mean I can't. There's no way to explain this, so that catechetical stuff is an attempt to talk to kids, basically. And right?
Yeah.
But it is very much a mystery. But the holiness of it is that it connects all morality to our embodied existence now. And what do we? I mean, this mystery of having a body after this is the crazy part for me, right? Because I can understand all my atoms going back to the ground, getting recycled, right? I get that, and I can even have this connection with the scientific connection with the atoms that were here when Jesus was here are still now.
You're breathing the same air that Eve breathed.
That's right. The same air as Eve breathed.
Yeah.
And
you're breathing the same oxygen atoms that Eve exhaled.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But we miss that mystery, and then we go, oh, science over here, some kind of magical thing over here.
Yeah.
And then the whole culture goes, yeah, you guys are just into some kind of magical cult.
Yeah.
I'm going, it's so much weirder than that, man.
Yeah.
It's really weird and cool if you get it. But if you don't, it's like this beautiful ghost. It's passing away. It seems like.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No.
That was a lot of grief.
Yeah. Jim, and then Sue had her hand
Can you
up.
write that down?
Yeah.
I
It's on the record, so you can watch that.
That's it. Did Luther, or acknowledging you are a child of God, or becoming a child of God in baptism? Or it's a mystery?
Bookmark that conversation. Bookmark that conversation, because especially when we talk about the small catechism, we're going to acknowledge also the kind of transformation of theology over the lifetime of the church. But I mean, that's an important use of language there. You know, are we becoming? Are the waters?
Or acknowledging.
Are they transforming us? Are they acknowledging?
Because even the words that I hear, kind of lost that boundary.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Sue?
Yes, I do have something to say.
Thank goodness.
As someone who was alive during World War II, I was only 5 when the war ended,
Yeah.
but we had people in the war. I want to say we saw sacrifice everywhere,
Yes.
not just in soldiers fighting, but
We were
in
talking about
homes,
this the other day.
within,
Absolutely. Women
homes,
sacrifice
within, yeah, it was
so
just,
much.
which I guess says we're capable.
Were we talking about this on Tuesday morning? Is that where this came up?
I think so.
Because we were talking about the idea of the war effort in general. But it's specific, I don't know, I can't remember because it specifically came up in contrast with, I mean, for example, you know, we just killed the leader of Iran with a targeted mission strike.
I know.
How are we bodily involved
Yeah.
in this? And not just this, but how have we been bodily involved in any of the wars that our country has engaged in since Vietnam?
And so much is said about the men that go to war and the women that go
Yeah.
to war, but it's the women and the families that are left behind that actually do the sacrifice.
Well, so this is what's fascinating about this is that having talked to people who were alive during World War II, yourself included, Sue, it was Shirley that was talking about this. Have Shirley Meyer, who is watching you, somebody driving their car, jacking it up, taking the tires off, and giving the tires to the war effort.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of.
Every bit of that.
Yeah.
And the women who went to war,
Yeah.
World War II, but they were
Yeah.
never considered in the military.
Yeah.
So therefore, when they died, their family had to pay to get them back and to bury them,
Yeah.
and no remembrance of them
Yeah.
through the military.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until after World War
Yeah.
II. If you ever get a chance to go to the Oregon Military Museum over at Camp Whitcomb, I went there yesterday, it was fascinating.
Sure. Yeah.
And that includes nurses.
Yeah, and
Big
nurses were not military.
Sacrifice.
Yeah.
They are buried at the American Cemetery in Normandy. Yeah.
Yes.
You can see some of the nurses' grave.
Right.
But yeah, and again, to kind of follow up on what Paul was saying as well, is it's this idea of it really is. Well, it's a much bigger topic. It's also just living in a reality where so much of what we do is to isolate ourselves from pain.
Yes.
And so whether it is, you know, having an opinion or debating what's going on right now where, and again, I don't want to get into politics out of this morning, but we just killed somebody that we did not have voice in, right? Congress didn't approve this.
Right.
Okay. But that's a symptom of the fact that and obviously 2001 was an experience. But by and large, when we think of the sacrifice of our military, it's in the context of knowing somebody who served. And there are many of us who have served in this room. I mean, you guys that did serve are generally Vietnam before, which again, that's kind of a turning point. But it's symptomatic of, and I think it's an effect of being in a world of great wealth and privilege, and doubling down on using that wealth and privilege to continually isolate ourselves from the consequences of said wealth and privilege together. I mean, it's tied in with the fact that, the stuff I'm wearing, everything here, well, with the exception of the boots, was manufactured in Southeast Asia somewhere. Right? The fabric is from cotton that was, maybe grown in the U.S., but probably not. I mean, my boots are handmade in the UK, but I paid the dollar for them. But that everything is made somewhere else, and there's nothing fundamentally wrong with that. That is the concept of global trade, and yet because slavery in its ancient, most primal concept was the idea of passing off the suffering of labor onto somebody else.
Yes, the
So-
sacrifices.
So when we talk about, we've abolished slavery, well, do we have people that are taking into their bodies the consequences of the labor that we're not doing? Are we offshoring our suffering onto somebody else? It's a very important conversation. And so, and we will get to baptism here, but to kind of bring it back into the sacramental concept, it's in our language. When we eat the body and blood and drink the blood of Christ, we are sharing in Christ's suffering in that moment. We are consuming that suffering, right? And it's more than that. It's more than that. But it's, when we talk about, this word, obviously there's a root of community in there.
Asian,
But
yes.
you commune with the spirits, right? You've heard that language before. So what does it mean to be in communion? It's to be in solidarity, to be in sharing.
To let your heart open to the Spirit.
Well, but it's yes, and it's the standing alongside. It's the in, with, and through. It's the next to. It's the I am here with you, right? So this is, and again, I'll preach this sermon eventually this year. But it's the idea of the altar in the round, right? It's the idea of our church being one radius of the circle in terms of the priesthood of believers surrounding the altar, and we are in communion with them. We are in community with them and with Christ, who is the Lamb who was slain, who sits at the center on the throne, right? And so it's the sharing of, which in and of itself counters the concept of offshoring our pain, because instead we're sharing in each other's pain and suffering, if that makes sense.
Right.
And then I'm going to talk about baptism.
Well, this is going to be on communion.
Yeah, that's okay.
This is an experience I had here,
Yeah,
and it was at the bishop's funeral.
yeah,
Quite large, a lot of people there. I was sitting in the back, and for whatever reason, when I was watching the people going up, it was like, oh my gosh, these are people I knew growing up.
yeah,
It was just, I just transposed people I knew from the past to those there. And I had a real sense that, hey, I am part of all.
we are doing these things in and with every other community who is praying the prayers that we're praying, and saying the liturgy that we're saying, is partaking in the bread and wine. We're not siloed in this building,
Can I just do an architectural thing real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just because, I don't know how we've lost this understanding of the architecture of Christian churches, but cathedrals and actually lots of churches.
Crosses.
Right. Well, they're really stubby little crosses.
Yeah.
The Anglican expression.
Sometimes they're like a Saint, or not Saint Peter's.
Right, you get some, seating this way. Okay, but a couple of things. One, this was rounded here.
Yeah.
Okay, it was rounded because this is where the crown of thorns is basically here. The cemetery was and is still in lots of places there. At the other side of the altar, you knelt here, right? You came up and you knelt here, kind of in the beard of Jesus, and these people are on the other side of the halo of Jesus. Okay. And their part, when we come in here, we join with these people out here dead. Okay? And we lose a lot of that because we didn't make a little cemetery. We should have torn down obviously the house. Corner property and put up a cemetery.
Very
That's what we should do, right?
Not too late to do a
Not too late. We do it right here. But
Or the divide back from Tony.
Right, but the whole thing was that and where's the baptistry?
Usually in the front.
Here or here. Okay? So I'm baptized here to be able to have communion here with all these other people and these people too.
Yeah.
So the past is included every time I enter here. And in baptism, I'm joined to the head, but I'm joined also to all these people who are joined to the head. And that's lost so much in a lack of sacramentality in our culture. This isn't new, right?
No.
No.
Well, I was going to add too, and where was the pulpit? The pulpit wasn't up here, it was here.
It was down
It
there.
was for
right?
practical purposes.
Right, because,
They couldn't hear you otherwise.
right, well, usually right
Yeah.
up there, yeah. And then it had a thing so you could hear you.
Howl that
Yeah.
amplified.
Right. But I'm afraid that people look at Notre Dame and go, hey, cool. Gotta go get mine. But-
Yeah, that is an experience.
And they just
It's
go
so
like-
big, yeah.
Yeah, it's so big and it's
Yeah.
so and this facade is so beautiful, right? All that kind of stuff. And that steeple was wonderful, blah, blah, but missing what was meant in Christian architecture. And I just get concerned that we're disconnected from the past. And of course, this is to say, this is everybody's future.
Yeah.
We think about it as all those people there, but that's where we're going to be. So this is the direction we're going this way. And then there's a heaven, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but
It's a corner property.
it's beyond the corner property. It's a mystery beyond the corner property. But what I'm saying is, we don't even like cemeteries anymore,
Yeah.
and we don't even want to. We don't have funerals where there's bodies. Last body I saw was
Deanna Beggy? No.
no. I'm
Paul Swanson? No, he would be.
no body, but you see a body, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Okay, but we go, let's not do any bodies anymore. Let's just cremate them and get rid of them, and nobody wants to see a dead body. Like we're afraid we're so antiseptic about death.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. We just do anything to deny that that's a part of us, and that's definitely our future. Okay. So anyway, I just do all that to say we're missing so much, because all this is to communicate how the cosmos kind of fits together. And now, of course, you can come in this way and this way. Heck, you can come in this. But it meant those things for centuries. It was the teaching device
Yeah.
of the church. So.
Well, and I think it's also, we can talk about the diminishing role of faith communities in culture, and you can quickly turn this into this is why the world's going to hell in a handbasket, because people don't go to church anymore. But it's more, what are the repositories of this knowledge? It's us, right? I mean, who carries this meaning? We do, right? I mean, I'm sure there's stuff in the library. I'm sure there's copies of Luther's Catechism in the Library of Congress. But the idea being is that this stuff is important to us. Who else is going to, I mean, and by this stuff, I don't just mean church architecture, but I mean kind of this sacramental idea of desegregating, de-siloing, suffering with, compassion, passion being literally the word for suffering, compassion instead of just empathy. Oh, I know how you feel. No, you don't, because I'm the only one that feels this. And I've used those words before too. I don't mean to shame anybody, but it's again this idea of so much of our lives are spent collectively in avoiding pain and offshoring our suffering and isolating ourselves from the consequences. And really, for me especially, not because I'm special, I am special, but I'm saying this is one of the core grounds of my understanding of this, is that this is where it kind of all connects. I don't know if it makes sense. This is what keeps me connected. So it keeps, again, grounded, authentic, what word you want to use. Again, we were at Shirley's on Tuesday, and I brought communion, and so there was 4 of us that took communion that day. And Shirley said, "Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this." And I said, "Shirley, there are 2 things on my letter of call. I'm the minister of word, and I'm the minister of sacrament. So at the very baseline, this is the one thing I should be doing, right? Like, so I appreciate your gratitude, but more than anything, understand that this is what." And it's important to think about that as well too. That's a very kind of Protestant vision of that. But what are the 2 responsibilities that we entrust our professional clergy with? Proclamation of the gospel and administering the sacraments. Everything else is adiaphora. Washing the carpets, adiaphora. This is it. This is why I go to school. This is what I'm the repository of. But it's not me, it's me helping you to do that. I'm being the servant of the congregation.
And you don't stop school when you graduate.
Nobody does. I mean, nobody, dumb. You just, keep learning or start dying. That's it. That's my
Going to
Yeah.
Paul's drawing there, which is very good, thank you, sir.
Oh, isn't it lovely?
It is.
That's the conversation I have with a lot of people. The difference between going to a church, which they consider a building,
Yeah.
and being part of a community,
Yeah.
which I have several friends that, "Oh, you can go to any church," and I'm going, "You don't understand. This is like second family.
Yeah.
It's a community. We agree and we disagree. We have discussions. But at the end, we're here for one reason."
Yeah, and this is one of the, last thing on this. This is one of the tough things, is that with the advent, with the continual splitting of the church in denominationalism, and I'm going to blame us Lutherans here.
Yeah.
This is one of the visions that we've lost, is that, yes, this is your community, this is your social group, your second family, which is part of the body of Christ. That's the sacramental nature of this, is that, which is, we are one, we are a skin cell on the pinky finger of the body of Christ.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing for us to remember, because so much of our energy now is focused on, well, are you Christian or are you not? Do you have the right theology, or are you Protestant or Catholic or whatever? And we've lost that kind of sense of we are the body, right? The hands, the feet, the skin,
And it's not-
the pancreas.
It's not just this community, it's.
Yeah.
I forgot one.
Okay.
I just want to say this. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. We'll get to baptism in 2 weeks.
It used to be all the altars were way up there.
Yeah.
Because this was too mysterious for the likes of us. We had to appoint somebody we could
Yeah.
trust to be our high priest between us and God.
Sometimes there is a curtain.
Yeah, right. But since Second Vatican Council, that table. Well, what was brought forward? Well, what I like is a place like St. Peter's. Maybe I'm a little higher church than some, but our altar, thank God, is a coffin altar.
Yeah.
You can notice it's a coffin altar. It's not just legs; it's a coffin. Yeah, it's built as why? Well, because this was where you put the saints' bones.
Yeah.
In other words, they're not just up here, but some of the bones are here. And we can't keep them all. So underneath here is a crypt
Where is it?
that you go down to go with all the other bones, because all those people are still alive. this is the thing that Christians somehow miss now, that they're not dead. They're not dead. When we eat of this body of Jesus, we eat a risen body, not just a dead body. Because, again, this is a place of death and resurrection. And so the whole mystery is about death and resurrection. Not being something that was past, but it's the mystery of daily life. Everything we do is dying and rising. Everything we do is letting go of what we can't, change and trying to hold on to something that we can, and rise with that. And so this whole idea that when we come here, we're coming into our ancestors, and for me now, I'm going to just put it this way. I'm really freaked out by the fact that I've said this to some of you, that I'm 98.5% chimp. And there's only 1.5% of me that's what we call human. And that's the way that God mysteriously has made us. But that we're connected with these human beings, but these human beings are also connected with all of the DNA of all these animals. If you look at the nervous system of a chimp or of an amoeba, it works exactly the same way our nervous system works. Okay, so wow. But what sense do we make of that? Again, I think we keep, when you have that duality between spirit and body, you get, science is over here and faith is over here, and that doesn't make any sense at all. You have to somehow try to integrate that, and if you don't, you're not living in the world that we live in. I'm going to say one other thing that freaks me out, because it's not that but AI is really, is now also in robotics. And again, if you just want to just digest this, we're only a couple of years off from the fact that we're going to have huge numbers of robots out there doing very, very human-like things. I don't know where they fit into this communion of saints. But it's very much a part of what I think of when I think of the future. Because this is not just about the past. This is about our past, our present, our future. It's about everything all in one. And unless we can connect those dots, I think we're in real trouble. I was describing my knees to my granddaughter the other day because I can't cross my legs sitting on the rug that she was in kindergarten. And she says, "Okay, you sit here now. Cross your legs." I can't cross my legs. Why not? Because my knees aren't human. What are they? And I said, well, they're not. They're mechanical, but it's like I'm already part robot to her. And I said, no, it's just metal. It's just metal. But if we're that one skin cell in the pinky, right? It's like I would almost really like it if every time one of us dies, we get to give us a little bone, right? And we can carve out that altar and a little porchy, isn't there? No, really. Just a little bit of chaos, right?
Oh, not too soon.
Oh, no. 20 years, but whatever, they're just years, right?
Cut off the fingernail.
Anyway, everything I've been saying, I think now we have to integrate.
That's got to be another.
What this is going to mean for humanity. And theology, and all of our understanding of the past and present and future, because it looks like the future, us, is going to, I really wonder what Ellis is going to do for John. I have no idea what she's going to do with all this. Lawyers are going to be here. This is really incredibly, it's scary, but it's also just incredibly inevitable and interesting. And the humanity embodied with electronics, I don't know if there'll be things floating in our brains or not, probably, if not chemical, silicon or something.
We're already full of microplastics.
Yeah, sure. But you know what I'm saying, is that we're not doing all this work.
Yeah.
But you brought it up, so that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but it's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I was about to recommend a book if you're interested.
Yeah.
It's fiction fantasy. It's a book called A Song, PSALM, for the Wild World.
For the who?
The Wild Build, WILDBUILT. It's a science fiction novel by an author named Becky Chambers. And it's from the perspective of an android in a post-industrial world, so kind of a technological collapse, but now it's from the perspective of a robot, android, whatever, that's trying to discover the meaning of humanity, or what it means to be human being. It's a fun kind of exploration of this concept. And just to clarify too, there's a big difference between these things.
Yes.
Intelligence is kind of that's when we cross over into the question of whether this has a consciousness. What we're talking about right now, what the world calls artificial intelligence, is effectively really complicated math that gets fed a bunch of information that continues to self-aggregate. So it will continually search out and refine its algorithms based on the information it gets. So it's not thinking in the way that it's not conscious in the way that we would define the separation here. But it's an important thing, which is to think about, and this isn't the first time in human history, either, that we've had to wrap our brains around the idea of what is human, or what is people, right?
Right.
Because that, in a lot of ways, is and I'm not necessarily comparing this thing, but that is the root of racism. It's the idea of figuring out who's people and who's less than people.
Right.
And that goes back. I was just reading an article this morning that we know that Neanderthals crossbred with Homo sapiens at some point.
Right.
And frequently, but we're discovering that it was primarily Neanderthal males with Homo sapien females, didn't go the other direction. And so one of the things that scientists are trying to think about is why. Why was that? Did it have to do with fertility rates? Was it something else? But it's interesting that we draw a line there Neanderthal is something else, right? But it's this, as Paul was getting at, it's kind of a slippery slope because we are 95 or 85%, chimp DNA, right? So where do we, in other words, where do we draw the line and say now you are human, and it's more than now you are conscious. It's now you're valuable, now you're worth more, right? Because we have this conversation around the human body all the time. At what point is it okay to terminate a fetus? Right. When are you human? Now are you human? Is it after the first heartbeat? Is it after the first breath? Is it after delivery? Or does it, is it, when a man and a woman, the birds and the bees, we need to have that conversation. It's, start there. And the temptation is to think that there is an answer, that we can draw a line and say, human this side, bundle of cells that side, right? But to kind of bring it back around, this is kind of the question, isn't it? Is to have a sacramental understanding of creation is to know that this is all good, right? We're really happy about the sixth day of creation, right? Because that's when God, metaphorically created us. But there were 5 days before that God was just as pleased about.
Yeah.
All right, kiddos, what do you have for us today?
So today we learned about Abram's call from God. And so we talked about what is God's call for us during our Lenten season to make ourselves better. So you guys want to come up and show your awesome artwork because it's really cool. You want to go first, MJ? Okay, I'll hold it up. And what are you going to do? Carrie?
This is the morning cleanup.
So this is what we're going to do. So we took the kids' photos, and then they wrote on there like things that they're going to do to make themselves ready for the Easter season.
Very good, very good.
Wow.
Can I hold yours? September's not done yet, so.
I'm gonna know that mistakes are okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Well,
We'll talk about that.
we can make copies of it too. Thank you, girls. Thanks, Jamie.
This is what the Native Americans have done that. It's on the line.
Sure.
Northern tribes,
What's that?
128.
Oh, in terms of are you part of, yeah, the fraction of native blood that you need to have. But this is the thing, right? That is a theoretical mathematical process to try and delineate something that is much more subjective. Because, let's save that one for 2 weeks. Because that is a fascinating conversation to have. Because at what point, right? So when in the Oregon Trail of Tears, when we rounded up all the tribes of the Willamette Valley and marched them up to what is now the Grand Ronde Reservation and said, you all live here. And then their numbers diminished and or they started, leaving the reservation and sometimes getting killed for it. And then living in Oregon City and intermixing with, at what point did their children stop being Kalapuya, right? This is tough, right? And it's such an interesting conversation because we're having it right now. How many generations need to be born in America before you're an American, right? I'm not that many removed. I'm like 3 generations removed. How many do you need? I mean, and these are arbitrary. Well, they're not arbitrary. These are human ideas that we're attributing to what is much more complex. Andy, and then I want to finish.
Right. You do have the arbitrary part. That's human.
Yeah.
I think the other part is when you stop becoming recognized as us and you
Yeah.
become them, that's when you can justify everything.
Yeah.
And that's what happened
Yeah.
this week.
Yeah.
They became them.
Yeah.
They weren't part of us anymore.
Yeah. Oh man.
And I can't justify that. I was in the military,
Yeah.
but I can't justify that expression.
Yeah.
Because you're not recognizing what is in essence a human being
Yeah.
or anything. You don't honor whatever it is.
Okay, and to make it Sacramento, okay? I don't think anybody in here has lost a limb or a finger, have they? Knees, right? But at what point does this stop being you? Right? You've heard of ghost limb syndrome, where people who have had limbs removed feel like it's still there. The nerves are still telling the brain that you've got a hand, even though you look at it. And one of the therapies that they do is they put a mirror, to simulate, essentially the limbs. Anyways, I don't quite have to retract on that, but the idea is that's an interesting metaphor to carry into humanity. We talk about the body of Christ. We talk about being the skin cell of a pinky finger, right, or a whole pinky if we're the Catholic Church, I guess. I don't know, but at what point, if you cut off that digit, metaphorically speaking, are they now them? But then take that in reverse. When we make somebody them, are we actually amputating them from the body of Christ? Or does Christ still see that we can do all the delineation and all the amputation we want, and yet the nerves are still attached for the divine, right? I don't know. I haven't put a lot of thought into that before. Okay, I want to round up. We're going to go 5 more minutes because I'm not preaching today. Anthony's preaching. Sucker. Did anybody bring their baptismal certificate in today?
It's on my dresser.
Bring it. If you bring it in 2 weeks, because I can't find my baptismal certificate. I don't know where they disappeared to. Found my communion, confirmation certificate. Anyway. Where was I going? Oh yes. Okay. Take this home. If you don't have a copy of Luther's Small Catechism, we're going to talk about that in 2 weeks. I wanted to close by asking, does anybody have a baptismal memory? In other words, do you remember being baptized, or do you have a story that's told around it? Kenna?
No, I was 8.
Okay.
So pretty old for.
Yeah.
I remember it was a lot of. I felt very embarrassed to be up in front of the congregation. My sister was 11.
Wow.
So we were old.
Did you get? It was a 2-for-1.
Yeah.
Both of you got baptized at the same time.
Yeah. We
Cool.
had matching outfits. My
Yeah.
mom made them. It was like a whole thing. I remember that's what I remember.
Yeah. Follow-up question, and I won't put you at the center of attention for much longer, but is there a point at which, I'm making an assumption here, is there a point at which the meaning of that sunk into you?
I mean, probably in like early adulthood, really. 'Cause
Sure,
I feel like
yeah.
it was the first time my parents felt a community in the church. We
Sure.
moved around a lot, and we did a lot with the church, and so we knew it was important, but I think
Yeah.
at a young age it wasn't
Yeah.
something that like, even at 8.
Yeah, no, and I was making an assumption that it wasn't,
no.
because you're talking about being nervous and embarrassed, which I would totally understand being the predominant emotions in that. But it's interesting, I was baptized as a wee little, bundle of cells. I have no memories of it. I don't know. I've been shown pictures of my baptism. I was in a dress, which confused me as a young child, It's like I thought girls wore dress. I had my baptismal gown. My brother wore the same one. It was the same baptismal gown that my mom was baptized and I was baptized.
Right.
I don't know where it is now. I'd be very curious to find that out. I think my grandma still has it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't remember when I actually thought about the meaning of that, because obviously it wasn't part of my consciousness. We'll talk about that next week. Somebody else had their hand up in the back. Ruby, sorry.
I was as an adult in this church,
How old were you?
about 25.
Sorry to put you on. Why? Why did you get baptized?
We were joining the church.
Interesting. And did you get baptized with your whole family?
No, it was only me because I knew I hadn't been.
But everybody else in your family had been baptized.
Yeah.
Did they consult you on that decision?
No.
That's what I kind of figured. Well, I'll ask the same question. Was there a point at which that brought meaning to you?
No, I think the whole thing was very touching.
So your experience of it was meaningful, whether or not you had agency in this decision. Susan.
I also was an adult. I was about 26, and I realized that the certificate I had was a certificate of dedication in the Unitarian Church from
Sure.
Massachusetts, and our son was going to be baptized. But I remember feeling almost a sense of panic, like, oh, what? I thought,
Is it legit? Is mine legit?
well, I remember talking to Pastor Holt, just like, can we do it today? Here's
How did you sneak in?
Like, the Ethiopian and Paul, what's to prevent me from being baptized
Yeah.
today?
The security system didn't catch you.
But yeah, so I was baptized the same day as their son.
What in that moment was there? What was the meaning in that moment?
In which, when I realized.
Being baptized,
Uh,
particularly with your
it
son.
was inclusivity. I mean,
Yeah.
belonging.
Yeah. I know somebody. I know one of my families in Fort Wayne. The dad waited to be baptized until his children were baptized, and it was a conscious decision.
Well, who can baptize who?
Okay.
Who can baptize who?
We're going to have this conversation in 2 weeks, because that's a longer conversation. But that is an important question, isn't it? Okay, I'm gonna get the last word. No. So I was baptized as an infant. I'm guessing when I went through confirmation, we talked about it. When I went to seminary, the problem is going, especially your first year in seminary, everything becomes very cerebral, right? You're breaking things apart. You're taking systematic theology 1 and all this other stuff, and so you start doing the math of theology, which can get very dangerous very quickly. Where for me personally, where the concept of baptism really where I got a gut punch was not actually my experience. When I was doing my chaplaincy, there were 6 of us, and there was a Presbyterian woman. And I was trying to remember her name. I think it was Rebecca. And she was in the NICU. She was in labor and delivery and neonatal intensive care. And I remember, because what we would do is on Wednesdays, we would meet as a whole group, and we would talk about what had happened in the week prior and what our experiences were. And she talked about having a baby die in the NICU. And the parents came to her and asked her if she would baptize their dead baby. She's Presbyterian, so just understand that there are some theological differences there, but we talked about it later. The family was Catholic, and she said, "Well, you have to understand, I'm not a minister, number 1, yet. I'm on my way there, but number 2, we don't really believe in the idea of limbo or original sin. God loved your baby, right? And they said, we still want you to baptize her." And so she did. She baptized a cold little preemie baby in the NICU there. And she came in on Wednesday, and she said she was fine with it. And she asked the parents, she's like, "Why were you so insistent?" And they said, "Because we needed to know that God loved our daughter." And I was like, "Oh!" Yeah. And that, for me, is the through line here. Is, again, to use this metric, is a lot of what the sacraments are things that we should know. Like, we should know forgiveness, we should know God's love, but we need to be told it. We need to be told it. It needs to come from that external source. And that's the communal part of this. This is why we can do it individually, but it's so important to do it together, is we are reminding each other. Every time we share in the meal, every time we baptize a baby, we're reminding each other. It's not just for the one being baptized. This is why we have kids come forward and sit up there by the font so that they can remember their baptisms. This is why we encourage people to dip their fingers in the water so that they can remember their baptism, because we need to tell each other, God loves you, right? If it's only that complicated for that moment, obviously there's a lot more theological conversation around the concept, but we need to tell and we need to be told.
But the consequence is, I cannot other you. I cannot divorce
Exactly.
you from Christ.
Exactly.
It's not my job to say, now you're no longer one of me.
Yeah. And it's not my decision.
It's not my
It's not my decision. I have no say in it.
Right.
All right. Thank you, folks. Next week, 80th anniversary conversation. The following week, we will get into baptism. That'll leave us at least a week afterwards to talk about communion. Thank you so much.
There's too much.